Hey, welcome to another Friday workshop. Hope you guys got your coffee all warmed up, ready to go, topped off. So, all right, so get into this indicator here that's coloring the bars red and blue. So that's coming from the XTL indicator, which came from Big Mike's. And so quite often, it's very common for someone to want BloodHound to do something based on a color, right? So NinjaTrader doesn't have the ability to read a color, right? So when an indicator changes colors or changes your bar colors or something like that, there's no way for one indicator to read another indicator's colors, right? So NinjaTrader just works off of numbers, right? So when one indicator is reading another indicator, the only thing that NinjaTrader allows to be read is just a value, a numeric value from another indicator. So colors can't be read. So what's needed is the XTL indicator. What's needed is that indicator needs to be written so that it puts out a value that matches the bar color that it's doing, right? So let's see, let's pull this up here. And there's the XTL indicator, right? So there you go. So, right, so you got a down color, a flat color, and an up color. So, since NinjaTrader doesn't allow, these colors to be read from another indicator, what's needed is the XTL has to output some kind of a value. And typically, what programmers will do is they'll use like -1 for a down or a short situation, 0 for a flat situation, and a +1 for an up situation. So, and so if you've got an indicator that's kind of spitting out colors like this, that's what you'll need to have added to that indicator if it doesn't already have it. So, just to give an example, what you would do, the way you would test your indicator is we're going to go grab the threshold solver. It's like that. And I'll just put in here a little name here. Alright, so we'll test the XTL. Let's go put that indicator in here. So there it is. Alright, and we can see that there's a plot here. However, we see a plot here called default. But if we go back to the chart and we look at XTL, see how there's no plot? There actually is no plot coming from this indicator here. So what's happening is when we go into BloodHound, basically NinjaTrader just kind of creates I guess you could say a phantom plot for some reason. So, and it's always going to be called default. So this plot here actually doesn't really exist. So, but just to go forward with testing, just click OK, and then to test it, we would typically do something like this for the outputs, right? And if that default plot did actually work, you would see an output on the chart here, right? You would see some long and short outputs from BloodHound if it was working, in fact. So, a typical example that I like to use of a properly written indicator is if we use NinjaTrader's candlestick pattern. Right? I'll swap that out. We'll stick that in there. And you can actually see it says they do have a plot here. It's called pattern found. And if we click OK, then hopefully, there we go. So there was a long pattern found, and right, and since Ninja's indicator is written correctly, there we go. We get what it's doing is Ninja's candlestick pattern indicator is outputting a positive 1 value to this found or pattern found plot, and therefore we get our long signal there from BloodHound. So, all right. So, anyways, yeah, I just wanted to cover that again. So, we'll move forward here with John's chart, or John's question, I should say. All right. So, we're looking for a particular kind of reversal situation here. All right. So, all right. So let's see. Rule number 1. All right. So after a bar achieves a 20-day high or a 20-period high or low for a reversal signal here, I should say the opposite signal. All right. So that's what we're looking for. Is we're looking for a bar to make a 20-day high or a 20-day low. All right, so that's our setup. That's our setup for a high reversal bar. And so what we're using is a 20-period high-low price channel, although NinjaTrader doesn't have that. So what I put on here instead is the Donchian channel, or the Donchain channel. I'm not sure how exactly that's pronounced, but right, so that's what we got on there. The Donchian channel with the 20 period. So that's our blue channel line. So, right, so that helps us track the 20-day high or low, and so we can see that whenever the wick touches the channel right there and right there, then we know that a 20-day low or a 20-day high has been made. So we can check for that comparison there. And like, for example, like right there, the wick didn't quite touch it, so that was not a 20-day low. So that one would not count. There, so. All right. So number 2 here is just a little clarification, so that basically if we make a 20-day high, and then it's possible that we could just keep going and make another 20-day high. So all of these new highs are basically just possible setups here for the reversal bar. So, and that's what rule number 2 is explaining to us. All right, and then number 3 is the trigger, and so we're looking for a particular price action here. So we need the close of a bar to be below the high reversal bar's low. So we need the closing price to be below the low of the reversal bar. So, and let me stretch this out. Actually, I haven't found a bar yet that qualifies. So let's see here. There we go. Looks like that one qualifies. So mark that, because I think that one works out. So the close of the bar has to be below the reversal bar's low, so the wick. All right, so I think that one works out. And looks like that one works out. So circle that one. All right, so we've got a couple of situations to work with here. Okay, so let's we'll get BloodHound open, and we'll start working on rule number 1, which is looking for that high reversal bar. All right, so basically a bar needs to make a new 20-day high. So that's for a long setup. So let's see, I'll go back here. So the way that we could tell if a bar is making a new 20-day high is that the high of the bar is also going to equal the 20-period Donchian channel, right? So we can see the high of each of these bars is touching that channel. So that's what we'll do first. We'll build that into BloodHound. All right, so let's get BloodHound open here. And let's name today's file. All right, 22nd. There we go. All right, so we got our file named, and let's just start working on the logic template here. All right, so there we go. And so I need some kind of a name for this. So that's what we'll go with. All right, so to check, so remember, so just to reiterate, what we're doing is we're going to be comparing the high of the wick to the upper Donchian channel plot, right? We want to make sure that those two are equal, or we're going to check to see if the low of the bar equals the lower Donchian channel. Right, that'll tell us whether we're making a new high or new low. All right, so we're going to grab a comparison solver. All right, so we're checking to see if the high or low equals we've got to figure out some kind of abbreviation name here. Yeah. All right, so we're looking to see if the high or the low price equals the Donchian. All right, so the first thing is the high or low price. So we're going to set A, right, our input A. We're going to set that to price, just like that. And now we have to figure out what prices do we want to use. All right, so this, the first rule is a reversal short. the reversal short. So these rules are actually going to generate a short signal. So, right, so when we're making new highs, we're looking for a reversal short, so we're going to generate a short signal. All right, so in other words, so when the high of the bar equals the upper donking channel, right, that's actually the setup for a short signal, right, for a reversal short. So for price type short, we're going to use the high price, and then in most cases for a long signal you're going to use the opposite price. So we'll set this to low. Right, so when the low of the bar, the low price, when it's touching the lower channel, that's our setup for a reversal long. So we're using the low price to reverse, to find a reversal long. So for long, we're going to use the low price, and for shorts, we're going to use the high price. And now next, B. So B is going to be our donking channel. So here's where we input the upper and lower donking channels. All right, there's our indicator, and let's change it to a 20 period. All right, so remember the upper channel, we're looking for new highs to generate a reversal short signal, and we're using the lower channel to find reversals long, to find a long reversal. So there we go. So there's our plots that we have selected. All right, and next, what we're looking for is we're going to turn all the outputs off, like so, set them all to 0, and we're looking for the A equals B here, right? So we want the price to equal the donking channel. So we're going to use the A equals B here. And there we go. So as we look at our chart, we can see whenever whenever a new high is made, right, we're getting that short output right there. Right, whenever a new 20-day low is made, right, we're getting a long output here. So that's our setup part. All right, so there you go. That's rule number 1, our setup. And now my guess is that, well, actually, I'll get into that later. I'll just kind of keep it simple here. Okay, so let's just move on to 3. And so now we're looking for the trigger. So the trigger is where the closing price, I guess this would be of the next bar, is below our reversal bar's low. And let's zoom in here. There. Alright, so zoomed in, so we can see the closing price of this bar, and we can see it's below the low of that previous bar. So that's what we're looking for. That's our condition number 3 here. However, you'll notice that, right, see on the next bar here, there's no long output, right? We're missing a long output here. So we need to take, so when a new high is made, we need to take that condition and shift it forward onto the next bar where the signal is actually going to occur. So remember, our signal is going to occur on this bar. And so the output that we're getting right now needs to be shifted forward onto the signal bar. So let's grab a look back node, and we can just, for now, we can just use the default settings for the look back node. Right, so the default settings has a displacement set to 1, and that's what we want. That's what we want, is a displacement of 1. So that, right, that displaces the signal forward by 1 bar. And so now when we look, so on the signal bar here, where we're going to get that reversal signal, now it has a short output on it, right? So this solver has been shifted forward onto the signal bar there. All right, so now we can start building rule number 3 here. So we're going to grab another comparison solver, all right, because we're comparing the closing price of the current bar to the low of the previous bar, to 1 bar back. There we go. All right, so grabbing our new solver, let's give this a name here. Okay, so we're looking to see if the close is below or above the low or high of the previous bar. All right, so both input A is going to be price and input B is going to be price. So there we go. Right? So we set those to price, and now we need to figure out what prices do we want to use. All right, so input A, right? So remember, we're comparing the close price. So going back to our rule, we're always comparing the close price to the low of the bar for a reversal short, and if we're using the opposite conditions for a long reversal, then we'd be comparing the close price to the high of the reversal bar. So so for a short, we're going to be comparing to the low of the bar. All right, so right here so what we have on the chart is an example of a reversal short. So we're comparing the close price to the low price to generate a short. So here we go. So we're comparing the close price to the low price to generate a short. And for the opposite, we're going to be comparing to the high price. So for a reversal long, we'll be comparing the close price to the high of the previous bar for a reversal long situation. Now, one more thing to do is, right, we're looking at the low or the high of the previous bar, right? So we're having to look back. We're having to look back 1 bar. So to get the price from 1 bar back, we need to change our look back to 2. Change our look back to 2, and we're just looking at the single value. All right, and I should have had this plugged in. There we go, so get that connected there. And there we go. We do have a short output on this bar, which is good. All right, so we're just looking at the one solver here. And let me scroll through here. And I want to find that other spot. Yeah, so here's the other spot on the chart that we found earlier. So we're taking the closing price and we're looking back to the high of the previous bar. And sure enough, the closing price was higher than the high of the previous bar. We have a long output on this bar. So that is correct. Alright, so now we need to join these two conditions together, right? And that'll get rid of all these other miscellaneous signals here. So let's grab a AND node and connect them both together. And that should do it. So let's just kind of scan through the chart here a little bit. Alright, so that one definitely looks correct. And yeah, there's another obvious one. So the close of the candle, close of our candle is way above the high of that previous candle. There we go. Yep, that one's pretty obvious. So there we go. I think that does it. Yep. All right. I think that does it for this one, for John's. So unless there's any questions on this, I'll leave this open here. And I'll put these rules up again. And again, we do save these files here. We do save them, and they will be available for download for you guys. And you know what? This is such a simple system. I didn't even bring up the screenshot here. But John did provide a screenshot, and so these screenshots are always very helpful. Yeah, right. They are very helpful. So, but yeah, this is pretty simple, so really wasn't needed. Here we go. All right, so Dean's got a follow-up question on these high-low reversal bars. All right, so let's get this chart up here, and let me find an example. Oh, actually, switch back to our high-low bar reversal topic here. So, yeah, so the question was brought up. You know, what happens if the reversal doesn't happen on this next bar? What happens? So how do we handle it if the reversal takes 3 or 4 bars? So let me find an example that we can work with. Okay, yeah. Here we go. So I've got an example here. Okay, so here we go. This is our kind of our setup bar. Right, that's our setup bar. And so we can see, right, the close here is way down there. The close of this bar is still below the high of our setup bar. And then we get to our third bar later, and then finally it closes above the high of our reversal bar. All right. So to do this properly, BloodHound needs the price of this reversal bar. All right. So typically what we need is a indicator needs to track the high of this reversal bar. So this can be done within BloodHound, but with some limitations. we can do this, but with some limitations here. So, and so I'm trying to figure out the best way to explain this. Yeah, here we go. Let me get some visual aids going here. All right, so what we're to explain what is being done mechanically, right, is we're taking the close and we're comparing it to the high of 1 bar back, right? So there we go. So 1 bar goes by, 1 day goes by, so we look at the close and we look back and say, hey, did the close of this bar, did it close above the high of our, of our setup bar? And no, it did not, so no signal. So we get to the next bar. And we have to do the same thing here. So we say, is the close of this bar, did it close above the setup bar here? But now our setup bar is 2 bars behind. So we now have a different condition. Instead of it being 1 bar behind, it's now 2 bars behind. So we have to change the solver, right? Well, we have to change our look back, what we have to do. And then when we get to the 3rd day, again, so we're on our 3rd day, so now our setup bar is 3 bars behind. So that's a different look back period, right? So each bar has a different look back period. And so we can do that within BloodHound, but we have to set up each of these logics differently. We have to kind of create a group of logic for each day going forward, right? So that's why really it's best if that's why, well, I should say, if we don't know how many bars it takes, for the trigger to happen. So let me just kind of clarify here. Right. So this is what we're calling the trigger bar, because price actually breaks above our setup bar's high. Right. So this is our trigger bar. This is our setup bar. And when the number of bars between our setup and our trigger, if it has a lot of variance, then that is kind of a situation where really having an indicator to track the price level that our trigger bar has to break above, that becomes necessary at some point. However, in BloodHound, if we're going to give this like a 4-day or a 5-day limit, for our setup bar to break above I'm sorry. If we're going to give like a 4 or 5-day limit for our trigger bar to break above our setup bar, that can be done in BloodHound fairly easily. But when you go up too far, then it becomes more and more complicated. And it'll make sense here in just a minute once we kind of walk through this process. So let's get BloodHound open. And let's get back to, here we are. We're on our reversal bar here. All right, so what I'm going to do is move that up. Actually, that one goes there. Going to reorganize stuff a little bit. All right, so here's kind of a couple of things that need to be done. So remember, our look back bar has a displacement of 1, right? Because remember, this is finding our setup bar. So this is finding our setup bar, right? So whenever price makes a new 20-day low, that's our setup bar, right? So those are all setup bars. And remember, we had to use a look back to take our setup bar signal and shift it forward onto the next bar, right? So remember, so we've got our setup bar signal now shifted forward onto a possible trigger bar, but this bar didn't trigger it. So what we have to do is take our setup signal and shift it forward again onto the second bar, and keep shifting it again onto the setup bar. So what that's going to require is more look back nodes. So we're going to have to grab another look back node, and let's start naming these here. So this one has a displacement of 1. And let's connect this new one up. So now this look back, we're going to set it to a displacement of 2. So let's change our displacement of 2. Now watch, so remember our setup bar right now, it has a displacement of 1, and when I change it to 2, it's going to go on to the second bar here. Right, so now we've taken our setup signal and shifted it forward onto a potential second bar trigger, right onto this second bar after, for it to become a trigger. And then we're going to need, so for each bar, each bar going forward, we're going to need a new look back here. So this one will be a displacement of 3. Let's change that to 3. And if we connect that up, right, there we go. So now we've taken our setup signal and we've displaced it forward onto a third bar that could be a possible trigger bar. That's part of it. And now, so now let's go back to our trigger. Remember, so this solver is actually finding the trigger bar. So if you remember, we're comparing the closing price to the high or low of the previous bar back, right? So we had a look back of 2. So now we're going to have to keep incrementing this look back. Right, so this solver here is only set up for this bar because it's only looking back 1 bar. So if we need to look back 2 bars, or if we need to look back 3 bars, then what we have to do is we have to keep incrementing our look back period. So we'd have to set that to 3 and set that to 4. So what we'll have to do is make copies of it, and we'll change the look back period. So before we start making copies of this, let's see, we're going to need to change the name here. So I'm just going to have to use abbreviations here. So we're going to have a look back. So we've got a look back of 1. So with this, and so what I'll do is switching to the solver tab. Right, we can see all of our solvers on here, and there's our solver looking at the close price to the lower high with a look back of 1. So I'm going to make a copy of that. Let's change the name. So now this one's going to have a look back of 2. And we have to change our look back. Increment that up 1. All right, so this solver is now going to work for this situation. It's going to work for this. So, I won't. I'm trying to grab my arrow. There we go. So there we go. So this solver now is going to look back 2 bars to see if this is a trigger bar. Right, and we'll have to make another copy in case we need a 3rd bar to be our trigger bar. And we'll just increment our look back period again. Alright, so there we go. So we've got 3 solvers, all with, different look back periods. So now let's switch back to the logic board. And let's put those solvers on the board here. So there we go. There's the solver with a look back of 2 bars. Let's put that up here. Let's take this last solver and we'll put it with here. And we'll need to make some new AND nodes. So there we go. Now, take a look at the chart. Now, of course, there's no signals. There's no signals because this was, a failed setup bar, right? Price is still below our high, so there is no signal there. But we would expect to get a signal here on this 3rd bar here. So let's add another AND node. Connect these up. And there we go. There is our reversal signal right on our 3rd trigger bar. Like so. Alright, so we've got, so each of these AND nodes, basically represents, different number of days after the setup bar. Right, so we've got a setup bar, and depending on how many days after that setup bar we actually get a trigger, that's what each of these AND nodes is giving us here. Right, so I can just put like a 1 in there and a 2. How about if I do this? 1. There we go. So we can name our AND node something like this. Tells us what's going on. And then the last thing we need is an OR node. Like so. So this system here works for 3 days after the setup bar. Right? If we need a 4th day, then you can see that basically we just have to create another group here, another group that allows for a 4-bar look back. Yeah, so if we need 4 bars after the setup, then we have to create a group that works for looking back 4 bars. So let's take a look at our chart now. Okay, so let's kind of take a look at some of these situations here. So, right, sometimes we're going to get multiple signals here, right? And that's because, the first bar after the setup met the conditions as a trigger, and so did the second bar and the third bar, right? So all three bars, you know, are above the trigger bar's high. So, right, so all three of those bars met that condition as a trigger bar. And even over here, right, so there's our trigger bar. And then all three of these bars afterwards, they all closed below that trigger bar's low. So we got, right, so we got multiple signals here. Now, we can clean this up, right? We can clean this up so that, right, so that we only get the first signal, and so we can get rid of the second and third signal afterwards. So if we want to clean that up, we can. Let's take a look at this. So there we go. Let's clean this up. And the way we can do that is we're going to grab a signal blocker. Right, because what we want to do is we want to block the second and third signal afterwards, right? So we want to block any consecutive signal afterwards. So we want to keep the first signal. We want to keep that first signal and then block the second and third. So let's plug in the signal blocker. And you know, we really only need to block for 3 bars, right? Since we only built a system that works for 3 bars after, we only need to block for 3 bars, right? So if you extend this out, if you make a, you know, if you make a 4th group or a 5th group to allow, you know, 5 bars after, then all you need to do is just, you know, change this number to however many bars after the trigger, you know, your system allows for. So since we only allow for, you know, the 3rd bar after, we can set this down to 5. And then the resets, let's go in here, and we're not using the reset signal, we'll turn that off. But there is one that we do want to turn on. So this input no signal, let's just set that to true. Input no signal. So what that means is this input no signal, what that means is that let me see here. Let's take a look at the OR node. So you see these 2 long signals here. So basically when the long signal right afterwards, right, the bar afterwards has no signal. So when there's no signal anymore, that also resets. That resets our signal blocker. And actually, that is a perfect situation here. Let me kind of illustrate what's going on here. So let's put some arrows on here. Right, so we're looking at the OR node. We're just looking at the raw OR node. And let's take a look at this. All right, so we got this signal. No. We got to figure out which one's the trigger bar. So that's our trigger bar. And if we do our comparison, there we go. trigger bar, and the next bar closed higher than our trigger bar. And let's see, yep, we got another trigger bar, right down there. A new low was made, so that's our trigger bar. And sure enough, the next bar closed higher than our trigger bar's high. So we did actually get two different reversal bar setups, right? So we got two different signals. Now, right, and so keep in mind that there's no signal in between, right? We have two bars here with no signal in between. So we don't want the signal blocker, when it starts blocking from this first signal, we don't want the signal blocker accidentally blocking this one. And so we can use the no signal in between to reset the signal blocker. So let's take a look at the signal blocker here. Right, so we can see that our second signal, it got blocked by the signal blocker. Right, that it got accidentally blocked by the signal blocker. And so we're using this input no signal. We'll set this to true. And so the signal blocker, basically when it gets to these bars, the signal blocker gets reset and it's no longer blocking. And so then when we get to our next signal, the signal blocker allows the next signal through because it's no longer blocking. All right, I think that does it. All right, so Josue's question involves an ATR stop. So I'm going to use the anaSuperTrend. There we go. There's the anaSuperTrend. And yeah, I'll just use the default settings. Let's get that on here. All right. So Sway's question is about generating a signal when the when an ATR stop indicator reverses direction, right? When an ATR reverses direction, so we can see the red dots, right, and the blue dots telling us the direction like that. And so what happens is, you can see what happens is when these indicators reverse, it's because price, right, breaks that line right there. So yeah, we can see price breaking that line or crossing that line, we can say, and right here, right, price crossed below our blue trailing stop. And right here we can see price crossed above our red trailing stop. So what we can do in BloodHound is look for those crossover conditions. So let's get BloodHound open here. And I'm going to move over to the logic template and we'll make a new logic template here. Okay. Let's see what to name this here. Okay, we'll just call it an ATR stop reversal. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a crossover solver. And yeah, so what we've got here is we've got the closing price is crossing over that plotted line, right? That plot line there. Let's connect that up. So we'll give this a name here. So So we're looking for the closing price to cross over, and I'm using the anaSuperTrend. So there we go. We'll just put in the anaSuperTrend. So once again, we're going to set A to price, and we're using the closing price. And now B is going to be our anaSuperTrend. So let's switch this over to the anaSuperTrend. And where is it? There we go. There's our anaSuperTrend. And the next step is to figure out, which plot is which plot is which on the chart. And with the anaSuperTrend, actually the dots and the lines are actually just the same thing, right? You can see there's a line and a dot, so that's why there's two different plots. So you can use either of these plots is fine. All right, either plot is fine. So we'll just leave it on the stop dot like that, and click OK, and that is it. So let's take a look at the chart here. So there we go, right there. Price crosses it, and then the indicator changes direction. All right, and another one right there. Price crosses, changes direction. There's our next one. Right, the dots switch right there. I mean, the ATR Stop changes direction right there. All right. Okay, this way. There we go. I'll just leave this up here for a moment so we can see how that crossover solver is set up. And, oh, right, yeah. And Josue would like to use a sound alert. So let's go into the indicator list. Onto the indicator list. Let's find BloodHound. So there's BloodHound, and you can see right there the setting. It says play sound. So it says set that to true, and there you go. Just go pick your sound files that you want to use for. You can set a long sound different from your short sound. All you have to do is just go in there and pick your favorite sound alert. Click OK. Like that. And there we go. Then just click OK and we're done. So Mark's question is, so sometimes what people do is, they'll have several setups in one logic template, right? So you'll have a setup, built, you'll have your logic built for, setup A, or signal A, and then you can have a separate group of logic, that gives you a signal B, right? And then you connect them together into an OR node, and that way you can see all of your, different traits, your signal A and signal B, on both at the same time on your chart. However, Mark would like a different profit target for signal A and a different profit target for signal B. And so he's wondering, how can you do that with Raven? And so, as we just looked at in Raven, right? Raven, you can only put in one profit target and one stop loss, right? So there's no way to set two different profit targets for for two different signals, because ultimately, when you join them together with an OR node, what you get out of BloodHound is just a single buy or sell. It doesn't. BloodHound doesn't differentiate between signal A and signal B. To further understand that, if we say we go into the indicators, right? If we look at simply what BloodHound's doing, or simply what any indicator's doing, is you can see that there's a long output and a short output, right? There's no long A output or long B output or long C output, right? So there's just a simple long output or a short output, right? So a buy signal or a sell signal. There's no sell signal A or sell signal B, right? So there's no way for Raven to know, if it's, all that Raven sees is that, hey, there's a long signal or there's a short signal, long signal or short signal. That's all that Raven can see, So if you have different profit targets, what you'd need to do is to break this up into different logic templates. So you need to go something like this. We can just call this A. Call that A, and we'll have to make a copy of it. And we'll call that B. And then we'll just have to delete A. Just take A out of the equation. And there we go. So there's B. And then we can go back to A. And what I'd suggest is just disconnect B. You can just disconnect it. And that's all. So just in case, you can leave B in here. Just in case, sometime down the road you decided that, that you would like to see both at the same time. You can just leave it in there. And that way you don't have to rebuild it. So if I delete that, then I have to rebuild it later. So I can just leave it in there. Just leave it, disconnected like that, and disconnect it up. Disconnect it up like that. All right, so there we go. Close that out. So I've got a signal A, and then a signal B, like so. Right, two different sets of signals. And then what I would have to do is basically run two separate Ravens. So the top Raven, I'll load in today's template here, and we'll set it to signal A, like so. Set our entry there to signal A. All right, and say we want A is going to be a 10, right? A 10 and 10. Profit target of 10. Like that. And let's see. I'll go ahead and enable that. There we go. All right, and then the second Raven, we're going to load the file up again, load the same file up again. And this time we'll set our logic template to B. All right, set our entry logic to B. And then for B, we can set our profit target to 20. Right, and our stop to 10, something like that. Whatever your profits and stops are, there you go. We can have different profits and stops. And I'll just go 20 and 20. And all right, enable. All right, so I've got two Ravens, and we'll click OK. So you see the buttons flickering. That was all the back testing going on. And there you go. So you can see you can run two Ravens on the same chart if you want to. It's probably going to be better if you run them on separate charts, right? Just for your own just just for yourself, just so you can easily tell which is which, just by having them on different charts. However, let's shrink up BloodHound here, but we can see we have a Raven here and Raven here with different signals. Right? And you can also see, if you look at the text, you can see this upper Raven has multi-signal A. Right, so this upper Raven is set to signal A, and this lower Raven, if you read the text, it says signal B. So this lower Raven is set to signal B. There. Right. And looking at the chart trader, there is no way to tell which is which from the chart trader. So Raven was really not designed to distinguish a signal A from signal B. Yeah, so there's no way to know which of these chart traders is which. So that's kind of one of the reasons why I'd say it'd be better if you put each of these Ravens on a different chart, so that'd make it easier for you to know which chart trader is which, belongs to which. So yeah, if I stretch this chart out here, let's see, well, I can't stretch the chart out long enough, but you can see that there's a Raven, right? There's a BloodHound from Raven, and it's set to signal A here. And then we have another Raven, and it's set to signal B there. All right, I think that covers it for Mark's question. Let's see. Oh, all right. Yeah, Mark's got a question about where did I find this toolbar. This is actually on NinjaTrader's download area. Nice little toolbar that a NinjaTrader user built with some assistance from the NinjaTrader support guys. So if I pull up my list, there you go. You can see it's called Toolbar Shortcut. So just search Ninja's download area for Toolbar Shortcut. So yeah, it's a really nice, handy tool to have, let me tell you. Especially when you're working with things like BloodHound, it's really handy to be able to mark these arrows and stuff when you're building a system. Really handy to be able to mark stuff out. So, all right, guys. With that, we'll wrap it up right here. All right. Bye-bye, guys. Have a good weekend.